Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on the Week in Review. I'm Amanda Vinicky. Summer is over and school is back in session.
After the bell rings come the tests, not just for students, but for city leaders.
Getting off to a good start is so critical.
Tests like finding more buses so all students can get to class, staying on budget, or give in to pressure from the Chicago Teachers Union to spend more.
We can't capitulate to good enough, right? We can't capitulate to letting JP Morgan Chase continue to rob our students and their futures of resources.
As Chicago Public Schools CEO fights to keep his job.
I don't mind the push. I really don't, because at the end of the day, I really believe that we all need to work on this together.
Mayor Brandon Johnson will also have to do some serious math to close a city deficit of almost $1 billion. Will he break a promise to leave property tax rates alone? Chicago's betting on Bally's, which itself is doubling down on its big gamble.
This is larger than the museum, larger than Wrigley, in terms of the amount of people we'll be putting in and out of here.
Demolishing the Freedom Center to make way for a permanent casino. While in the race for president, Kamala Harris gives her first interview since becoming the nominee.
What I believe the American people deserve, which is a new way forward and turn the page on the last decade.
Republican Donald Trump wants to know why it didn't air live.
And she didn't look like a leader to me, I'll be honest. I don't see her negotiating with President Xi of China. I don't see her with Kim Jong-un like we did.
Joining us for this week's Week in Review panel are Laura Washington from ABC7 and the Chicago Tribune, Shruti Singh from Bloomberg News, Becky Vivi of Chalkbeat Chicago, and Steve Daniels from the Chicago Tribune. Going to start with the presidential race. Steve, assuming you watched the big interview, what did you think?
I thought it was kind of boring. Which is probably what Kamala Harris wanted out of it.
Why? What presidential candidate wants a boring interview?
Well, because of the concerns going in terms of what was her job, and her job was, there was the knock on her from the right is that she's a wild-eyed liberal, and what she wanted to try to show was that no, I'm not. I'm a moderate, or I'm certainly maybe a little left of center, but I'm not that. I'm also a normal person. I smile, I laugh, I tell some jokes, and I think it turned out from her vantage point okay. I don't think it wowed anybody, but I think it was fine and did the job for them for the time being.
Didn't need to wow anybody, Becky?
Well, this is the thing I was thinking. I mean, I feel like some of these primetime interviews don't have the same both viewership that they used to and also same impact, I guess, on the conversation and the culture. So I don't know that it's going to sway very many people. But
she can count on, I don't know, coconut tree memes for that and
perhaps
go straight to the people and bypass our folk, Laura?
Well, it was a shrewd strategy. They negotiated the fact that they would have Tim Walz, the vice president, there with her. It was like a 27-minute interview. It was at a nice, relaxed table, relaxed setting, just one reporter. And so I think that was always going to work in her favor. And she's really still trying to introduce herself to the public and to voters. And she, Steve, as you say, she wants to show that she's not the evil person or the far left person that Trump is suggesting. But there were some moments where she was pushed by Dana Bash on her positions. And she's in the center now, but she wasn't in the center at one time. So she has moved to the center. Trump is saying that means she's a flip-flopper. I thought she did a very good job of explaining that she did change. People can change their minds, especially in politics. And I think that she did no harm. She didn't do herself any damage. That was the best thing she could get coming out of it.
President Trump, of course, has changed his viewpoint on many an issue as well. Sticking with you, Laura, you wrote this week, actually, with some advice for Harris. And this is something that didn't really come up a lot last night. But you said she should engage on the issue of crime. How come?
Because Donald Trump has spent his whole political career beating up on American cities, in particular the blue states, the blue cities, where she's going to have to get her vote about the rampage of crime, about all the terrible things that are happening. And she's going to be perceived, or he's going to try to make her be perceived as soft on crime. She's a former prosecutor. She's a former attorney general. Folks like that usually aren't in that category. So she's got some room to show that she can be just as tough on crime as anyone else. And I think that you're going to see some of that during the campaign.
Okay, because right now we've got a lot of focus on the economy.
For
but
sure.
You think crime is going to become?
The crime is always going to be a boogeyman that the Republicans, I think, in this case, are going to try to put out there, particularly related to the border. And she's vulnerable on the border because Trump is claiming that she hasn't been as effective in terms of stopping illegal migration. So, and he claims that leads to crime. So she's got to show that she can be tough on the criminals, and she's making a case for that.
And Shruti, Bloomberg has done some polling, and this was pre-interview, but post-DNC. What does it show about the state of the race?
I mean, one of the questions right now is whether the honeymoon period for the vice president is towards the tail end, and it's unclear right now because there was a big bump that she saw from President Biden in terms of movement, right? And then the DNC may have given her a bump too. It's unclear, but right now what it shows is that in swing states she's closing the gap.
And this was, again, polling that no Illinoisans were polled because we don't matter. This is in swing states, and there are more of them.
I mean, we're talking about states like Arizona and Nevada. So we're talking about places where I think both sides are looking to make a gain.
But it is still super, super, super close. Anything, Steve, to add before we get to city issues?
No, I mean, I think the debate that's coming up on September 10th is going to be a big one. The one with Biden and Trump, we wrote about that beforehand that that was going to be huge, and it turned out that it was. I think this one's going to be huge too, and
as huge?
Maybe not quite, but close. I think it's huge, much more huge for Donald Trump than it is for Kamala Harris. I think Kamala Harris has shown herself to be a pretty decent debater. I think, he's really struggled to figure out how to go after her. And he really hasn't found any punches that land. He's going to need to try to find some for that debate in order to change the momentum of this thing.
And he performed fairly poorly in that last debate. He got overshadowed. His performance got overshadowed by the fact that Biden did so badly. But he wasn't punchy. He didn't get to the issues that I think his people wanted him to get to. So he's going to have to really perform at a much higher level, I think, this time. In this case.
Well, we will talk about that, but Shruti, let's go to you because Mayor Johnson this week revealing that the city is facing a budget for next year of nearly $1 billion. Is this a surprise?
No, I think this is what the forecast had indicated a year ago. They usually do a 3-year forecast, and so last year when they passed the 24 budget, they'd actually said that it was going to be about $980 million or so, and that's just roughly where things are right now. I think the thing that was unexpected is that they're now projecting a deficit for 2024, the year that we're currently in. So they had already closed a gap of more than $500 million when they passed the budget last year. Now they're saying because of things like not getting the pension contribution from CPS, now they're facing a budget deficit of about $223 million to close out this year. So that's one thing they're going to have to deal with before they even get to 25.
We'll be back with you in just a second, but let's stick there. Explain. So the mayor appoints the members of the Board of Education. Correct. He had one plan, wanted them to borrow. The board rejected that, but are just not paying the pension payment, Becky?
Well, so let's go back in time a little bit. So this was a shift that Mayor Lori Lightfoot made to say, hey, listen, CPS, this pension fund is the municipal employees fund. Most of the employees and retirees in there, at least more than half of them, I believe, are CPS employees, former CPS retirees. So Lightfoot said, hey, CPS, you're going to start making a contribution to help us correct on the city side for this pension fund. And Johnson and the teachers union were very against that shift at the time. And so they talked a lot about how Lightfoot was saddling CPS with extra costs. So when he got into office, and I think some of his appointees on his board were like, listen, you said you were taking this back. And I don't, that's not happening, but the CPS did pass the budget in July that did essentially say that we expect the city to pick this back up.
So where is this money going to come from?
It's a bit of a
Yeah, it's about $175 million. So like Becky said, CPS has been paying this annually, and it's not the entire contribution. CPS and the city have been splitting it since about 2020. So last year, it was about $175 million that CPS put in towards this. Now the question is, where is that going to come from? Because both sides have deficits. But right now, the city is under the obligation in terms of paying that. There is this intergovernmental agreement between the two true, but it's hard to understand where that legal standing is, right? I mean, Becky, I don't know what you think.
Well, it's odd too because they're on slightly different budget cycles. So the city passes a budget that will start January 1. The district passes theirs, starts July 1. And so there's some like weird lagging that's happening. So the fact that the payment, they're saying we're not, making this payment, that is addressing this year's issue for.
So you have a half a year of wiggle room, but really no wiggle room in terms of the dollar amount. So Steve, what?
Well, ultimately, Brandon Johnson is responsible for all of this. And that's the thing that makes this squabble so kind of ridiculous. So he's the mayor, and he's worried about the city budget, and he's got to balance that. Then there's a CPS budget. Well, he, at least nominally, supposedly controls CPS, too. And has something, and he's sitting here trying to say, you, CPS, need to take care. Well, he's in charge of all of it.
Well, the extraordinary thing is that the CPS is pushing back, the superintendent and the board.
Right.
I mean, he appoints these folks, and it's very unusual for them to say no to the mayor. And one of the reasons they're saying no is one of his suggestions, I believe, is that to borrow money.
Yeah.
To borrow money at a very high interest rate. And they're saying, this is just not a really wise financial thing to do.
Right. And essentially, we obtained a memo that the district's budget office put together, basically saying if you want us to take out a high interest short-term loan, this is what it will do to the CPS budget for the next couple of years, and how that will stack on top of the district's own financial issues.
Steve.
I was amazed in this, and I think some of your reporting showed that when CPS was talking about being the largest junk bond issuer in the United States of America.
Junk bond is a strong word. Those four-letter words.
No, junk bond just means it's not credit. It's not a credit grade bond. It's higher interest rate.
But it's telling to be junk status.
So why? And basically they were saying, why would we add to that? Why wouldn't the city borrow the money? They have a better credit rating, I think.
They do have a better credit rating, but I think the finances in general of state and local governments are headed towards a challenging period because they received billions of dollars across the country from the American Rescue Plan Act. And that was to help with recovery of dollars that they lost because the economy had been hindered by COVID in various ways, right? So part of it was revenue replacement. Part of it, the economy got a boost as well, right? So there was a rebound in general that the economy saw. Now they're headed towards a few years now where state and local governments are not going to have that flush bank account that they were used to the last year or two. So I think there's challenges all around.
And are there any answers? Because we've been focusing on this year's budget, but again, a far bigger number is coming ahead next year. And Brandon Johnson campaigned saying that he will not hike property taxes. Is that on the table?
Oh, he hasn't taken it off the table. When he was asked about that, he wouldn't rule it out. And he's also talking about other kinds of opportunities, putting slot machines in at the airports. Those solutions are not going to get anywhere near the numbers that you're going to need in there. And as we can see from the Chicago casino, when it comes to gambling, we can't rely on it to be the kind of revenue source that we once hoped it was going to be. So there's not any real clear answers. He's got a revenue committee in the city council that's supposed to be studying this, but they've been studying it for a long time.
They met once.
They met once,
and that's what they've done.
So that's what they've done.
Not enough, basically, you're saying, Steve.
I mean, I don't know what else they're doing behind the scenes, but I mean, in terms of this supposedly being a high-profile, problem-solving sort of entity, at least to the public, and nobody's seen it do it.
I think there is a question about what new types of revenues or what adjustments. The Revenue Committee, you're right, they've only met once. But one of the things that they talked about and the administration talked about is, are we taxing and levying the right places, the right things, the right people, the right companies, the right types of products? And now people are talking about, should there be a tax on services, which is not something that's done in Illinois for the most part.
But the city can't do that on its own.
No, the state, as you know, covering state government, that is something that they are going to need help from the state for.
Yeah, and the state has not been interested in helping the city out of its fiscal problems. I mean,
Nor
say
CPS
the least.
at this juncture.
Yeah,
I'm continually here.
Using CPS and the city in the same thing.
As one.
Yeah, in terms of the state's interest or lack thereof.
Right, they were very indifferent when the CPS and the superintendent and the mayor went down there to Springfield, and they're saying now one reason why we want this short-term loan is because we give us some time to go down to Springfield and lobby and get more money. But like you said, Steve, I don't think that's not going to get a warm welcome.
There's also a real reluctance, I think, from this administration who ran on no property tax increases, but also ran on being a people investor, an investor in people. And there is a real reluctance to even to really discuss the expense side of the ledger. We do know that, at least on the CPS side, that there has been a growth in the number of staff and employees in schools, which many would say was well overdue. Had a lot of under-resourced schools for many, many years. With the COVID dollars, they were able to really invest in those positions and add a lot of new positions, social workers. And now we have to figure out how to continue. Yes, right, and they have had gains. Now the question is, how do we continue that when you don't have revenues to match that $2.8 billion cushion, as Shruti talks about, that we had the last 3 years? And so these structural deficits are, both an expense and revenue side of the equation. And I do get the sense there's a real reluctance to talk about, well, we did this in the pandemic, but we might have to pull it back. There's one area I know that CPS has talked and been, open with us at least about, that they cut back on, they call it out of school time. It's after school programs. They did pull back the funding this year on that because a lot of that was boosted during COVID. But I don't see them making big cuts, and I don't know about city side either.
I mean, the one thing I want to note also is that in talking about the city's budget, and this particular discussion is on the pension payments between the city and CPS, but you can't talk about the city's budget or property taxes without talking about pensions, because roughly 80% of property taxes in the city go towards the pension contributions. So getting their arms around who's going to pay what level. I mean, they have a mandate that they're trying to work towards, and understanding where those dollars go and how they're going to reach that mandate is part and parcel of their budget constraint.
And Steve, you wanted to weigh in.
I was just going to say, the CPS isn't the only place where staff has grown. City government staff has grown 7% since the pandemic as well, like 2,400 people. And they can't afford it. And so, what we're going to see, I think, there's just not going to be a choice. Will be probably a hiring freeze. We will see furloughs potentially. We may see layoffs if it comes to that. That's probably last resort. But I would imagine that all of those things will come before a property tax.
But still not going to make a very big dent when you're looking at a nearly $1 billion deficit.
Shruti might have a better idea of that than I do, but I think that you can get some real money.
You can make some movement there?
Progress.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to know exactly what they're going to do, but I also want to just note that we usually talk about the deficits on an annual basis. So right now we're looking at a deficit in 2024 and then an even larger one in 25. But let's also remember that there's a long-term debt for the pensions. And I don't want to just keep going back to that, but there's a $37 billion unfunded pension liability that the city carries. Now, the city's budget on an annual basis, if you take into account like all of their funds, is about 16 to 17 billion. So take into account then that the long term, like if you're looking at 30 years out, the whole liability, the net unfunded portion of it is 37 billion.
So there's both the table issues, and then there's paying the mortgage of sorts as well, that you can't forget that part. This all comes as Becky, as we're talking about the CPS budget as part and parcel of the city's ongoing monetary issues. The mayor wants to get rid of the CEO still, but they were together this week. What can you share about their interactions?
So they rang the bell together on Monday, and then I believe it was Martinez was here on WTTW and admitted that they hadn't met in a couple of weeks and don't have plans to meet.
Hadn't heard personally that he was going to get the axe.
Was looking for other people to replace him. It's hard to tell because I think there's the pressure of the negotiations with the teachers union right now kind of hangs over all of this, and so it's hard to tell if this is a pressure tactic, getting out to put pressure on him to do something, Martinez to do something different at the table with the CTU or what. It's not clear to me where exactly that's coming from, but I will say when this news broke, the board was actually pretty clear that they were not interested in removing Martinez, and it would take a board vote unless he resigned, which, the mayor could say, I demand a resignation letter. I know we've seen that happen with other positions, but the board doesn't seem like they're ready to do that, take that kind of measure. And actually this week, 400 principals and assistant principals wrote a letter to the board saying, please do not take any action, leave Martinez at the helm. They praised him for helping propel some of the momentum you mentioned, the gains that they've seen academically since the pandemic, and these principals were basically saying, for the sake of stability, please do not do not let the apple cart get upset up at the top there, because while what happens day to day at a school can feel far away from central office, chaos at central office can trickle down in a way that makes it difficult for school leaders to.
But Laura, it seems as if the Chicago Teachers Union is not buying this. They are frustrated with Martinez not wanting more, doing enough.
Stacey Davis Gates, the head of the CTU, has been very emphatic about and very critical of Martinez, and she's even wrote an op-ed in the Tribune about it and said, he more than anyone else should understand. He's a product of Chicago Public Schools. He grew up in Chicago. He should understand how important this is, and she's been pretty strong on basically demanding that Martinez respond, and she should. Her argument, and I think the CTU's argument, is that they're not focused on the children, that they're just focused on the bottom line, and that. But, again, there's no one's answering the question of where this money is going to come from.
Nobody has that answer.
Well,
Becky,
and I don't know if folks saw that today or late last night, WBEZ reported that he's considering or planning to make an offer at the table of 5% raises. And so will the teachers union say, oh, okay, well, maybe we can work with that?
I don't know.
They're asking for a lot more than that.
They are, but I don't know if that will create some sort of breakthrough. I'm not sure. I just think it's an interesting timeline
it perhaps changes
here,
the game,
where you've got negotiations were hot, and they had this public session specific about finances on August 13th, and on August 14th, the news leaks that Johnson wants to replace him. I just think there's timing things here that, to me, you cannot decouple this chatter and rumor mill about his position from the negotiation. There's lots going on behind the scenes, I'm sure, at the table there.
Steve, what do you make of that?
Well, I was just going to say the risk for Brandon Johnson on this is, I think a lot of Chicagoans didn't know who Pedro Martinez was before this whole kerfuffle, and a lot of them do now, and a lot of them like the fact that he has taken the position that he has. They're taxpayers. Brandon Johnson's not a particularly popular mayor. I think we know that. His ratings are very, very low. He's taking a big risk, in my opinion, in being the heavy and the bad guy, pushing out somebody who people are paying attention to and kind of like.
Is that perhaps why this is floated and not a done deal?
It's hard to know, but I do think that it is interesting if you go all the way back to the campaign trail when he was specifically asked, how will you be how will you be across the table from your friends at the teachers union? And he said, who better to deliver bad news to a friend than a friend? And I don't know that I see him taking on that role to deliver any sort of bad news or
if he
have
ousted Martinez,
yeah, if he
would be
ousts Martinez
seen
politically, that might look really not good for him.
Particularly right in the middle of negotiations.
Exactly. It's going to give his critics fuel.
And it looks as though he's not really a neutral player here, that he really is taking the side of the teachers union and against CPS.
And interesting, Ed, I think from when Martinez was on this program, he said in terms of filling that budget gap, he said schools and closing any additional schools once that moratorium lifts will not be something that he considers under his leadership. But I know that that is on the table elsewhere. So with that, we are out of time. Our thanks to Laura Washington, Shruti Singh, Becky Vivi, and Steve Daniels. We will be back to wrap things up right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Polk Brothers Foundation. Additional support is provided by
And that is our show for this Friday night for what hopefully for most of you is a long weekend. Don't forget, you can get Chicago Tonight and the Weekend Review streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and on our website. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter, too. It's called The Daily Chicagoan, and you can find it at WTTW.com/newsletter. Now for the Week in Review, I'm Amanda Vinicky. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and good night. Happy Labor Day weekend. Let's continue our discussion. Chicago betting a little bit on Bally's to come through. Steve, was it emotional at all to see the Tribune publishing plant knocked down to make way for this casino?
I think for some people at the Tribune it was, yeah. I think, you know, there wasn't a lot of love, though, for working there, you know, compared to, say, Tribune Tower or something like that. So
that still puts a pang in my heart every time I walk by.
Not a lot, yeah, not a lot, yeah. So, yeah, yes and no.
What do we think, Laura, about, or Shruti, for that matter, about how much money the casino is going to bring?
I think the estimates were that when it's fully operational, that it's going to bring in a couple $100 million into the fire and police pension funds. I mean, I think that's at least the hope.
Is that aspirational?
We don't know when it's going to start operating, and we don't know when it's going to be fully operational. So I think the goal is to open it by 26.
So don't start budgeting anything there until we actually see some numbers coming in.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury law firm dedicated to preserving the dignity and rights of all individuals.